Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. This video is not going to be a how-to repair type video, but I wanted to show you a few things that led me to realizing I needed to replace my lower intake manifold gasket, and also tell you a little bit about why. I didn't actually do the work myself, but had a shop do it for me. So I'll go ahead and show you a couple things.
So this is the underside of my 2011 Jeep JKU Wrangler, and if you've watched my previous videos lately, you know that I have just recently replaced the upper oil pan gasket. It's the blue gasket up there, because I was getting some oil leak and oil dripping on the transmission housing is where it was showing up and blowing back while I was driving, and then also on the oil pan. So that led me to replace the oil pan gasket and also the valve cover gaskets up on the engine. So one day I was down here making sure that that was not leaking, and all of a sudden I noticed that there was some oil drops here on the motor mount. So this is, I had never seen oil here before, not at all dripping on off of the pan. So I was trying to figure out where that oil was coming from, and it looked like oil, and there was also oil puddle, not very big, but there's oil puddle on the ground. And I was pretty sure it was oil, so I needed to figure out where that was coming from. So if you zoom in a bit more, or you look a little bit more closely up above the motor mount, on the motor itself, you got all these crazy, looks like dried up oil marks where the oil is running down the side of the motor. So that was kind of a clue to what might be going on, but I didn't really know how to put it all together. But obviously oil was leaking from somewhere up above and not from the oil pan. Okay, so now we're back up on top of the motor, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's the valve cover gaskets are leaking. Even though the motor mount drip location didn't really make a whole lot of sense with that, I did go and look real carefully to see if there was any oil marks around where the valve covers are, to see if that might be it, but everything is dry and no oil leaks, so that didn't really help me out, but it was not from that location. Then another common location is down here around the main bearing here, and I was looking to see if there's any oil. Nothing there. So then I started really scratching my head. So then I happened to notice and shine a flashlight down in this notch, this crevice between the air conditioning compressor and the block itself. And then I took my flashlight and shined it down in there, and you're probably not gonna be able to see anything, but I noticed some glint off of liquid, and stared at it real hard, and I realized there was fluid down there, and there's really no reason there should be any fluid down there. And then I noticed there's some brown stain, just like I was seeing down along the side of the motor. So that gave me an idea that whatever it was dripping down into that location, and then down into the motor mount from that location. To the front of the motor, and YouTube and Google helped me try to figure out what symptoms of a intake manifold gasket might look like. But if in this crevice here underneath the thermostat is where I was actually seeing some more fluid pooling, and a dark residue of where fluid had leaked out. And that's when I started to realize that it probably was the intake manifold gasket that was leaking. And then I started thinking about some other things I had noticed. I noticed that I was losing coolant. I looked at my coolant reservoir, and the fluid had actually dropped a noticeable amount, but not a whole lot, over the last few months. You recall I replaced the radiator not all that long ago, and so the fluid should have been pretty high up there. Another thing that I've been battling is what seemed like low fuel pressure when it would sit for long periods, like overnight. It would take a little while to start because you had to wait for the fuel pump to repressurize the system. And I checked all the evap system, and everything seemed leak tight, so I wasn't sure why there was losing pressure. There's not really a lot of good YouTube videos or Google searches that I found that had all these symptoms, but made me think it was intake manifold gasket. And so I went over to a shop here close by, and guys there agreed it looked like it was the gasket, so went ahead and had them replace it. Not that I couldn't do it, but
It looks to be a pretty long procedure. There's lots of good videos on YouTube on how to do it. And honestly, I'm just a little bit afraid of dropping something deep into the motor and not being able to get it back. So to me, it was not worth the risk to try to do it myself, so I had the shop do it for me. So it's been about a week, and everything has been leak tight, no more drips, and all my symptoms kind of make sense because oil and coolant run through that gasket, and as well as the fuel system. So all my symptoms do seem to make sense to go along with that. And if you happen to notice that you're seeing some oil drops and you're not sure where they're coming from, and you're also losing coolant at the same time, maybe fuel pressure, one thing you can think about is it might be that lower intake manifold gasket. And hopefully this is helpful to some of you to maybe see what your symptoms are and if there's a help for what's causing it. If the video is helpful, feel free to like or subscribe to the channel, and we'll see what videos coming next.